This man was in a mental hospital when he suddenly saw a strange phenomenon. Thousands of cockroaches appeared from nowhere and led him to a room. There the man saw a woman who seemed to be possessed by a demon. Although he did not want to deal with this, he eventually returned to help the victim. It turned out that he was Constantine, a master of exorcism.
Ab insidious diaboli, laberatos domine!
When the woman woke up, she was shocked by the scene of destruction. It seemed that the demon did this to warn Constantine that Liv would be its next target. As for why Constantine appeared in a mental hospital, it turned out that he had brought himself there with the desire to heal. Because in a time of summoning the devil, he accidentally let the devil drag the innocent girl Astra to hell. That made Constantine fall into the deepest regret. So he went to the hospital with the hope of getting rid of his spiritual thoughts. Constantine really wanted to believe that there were no devils in this world, but it seemed that the doctors here could not help him. Back to reality, Liv is the daughter of Constantine's old friend, so when Constantine discovered the message, he couldn't bring himself to leave her behind. When Liv drove home, the rear camera suddenly had a problem. There was clearly nothing behind, but the car kept warning. Liv had to get out of the car to check, but suddenly the car stopped working. At the same time, the electricity around that area also went out. Feeling that something was wrong, she decided to walk home. At that moment, the ground suddenly cracked. Immediately after, a giant hole appeared. She was almost swallowed by it. Liv quickly turned around and ran away, but Constantine's taxi blocked her way. Seeing the strange man, she intended to use pepper spray to defend herself, but Constantine spoke up in time. It turned out that he had come here to rescue her. He had no other intentions. Without Constantine, Liv would not have survived more than 3 days, but in her eyes, he was just a strange person. Liv took Constantine's business card and turned away. Constantine then went down to the sinkhole to check, but there was no devil inside, only an angel named Manny. This hole was not caused by Manny. He had only come here to visit his old friend Constantine, but Constantine didn't seem very happy. He didn't even care about Manny, but this angel didn't have much time either. Manny left only a warning about the coming apocalypse. Just as Constantine was about to ask more, Manny flew up into the sky. On this side, Liv had returned to the apartment. She discovered that someone was following her. This person was holding a dagger. He was secretly doing strange things on her door. That night, the lights in the hallway kept flashing. The demon chased Liv all the way to the apartment, and her neighbor became a victim of the demon's pursuit. In the middle of the night, the sound of an ambulance woke Liv up. She was shocked to find that her neighbor had died a horrible death, and a strange symbol appeared on Liv's door. It didn't stop there. The morgue worker was halfway there when he heard a noise behind the car. He stopped the car to check and encountered a horrifying scene. Early the next morning, Constantine was still following Liv. As soon as she saw him, she showed Constantine a photo of the door. Liv suspected that the person who carved this symbol was the culprit who killed the neighbor, and that person was none other than Constantine's driver. His name was Chas. In fact, the image that Chas carved was a protective charm. It was the symbol of the Eye of Horus. Without it, the person who died yesterday would have been Liv, not the neighbor. Constantine knew the reason the devil targeted Liv was because it was related to her father. Hearing that, Liv was very curious, because she knew that her father had died since Liv was born. Only then did Constantine tell her the truth. Liv's father had only died last year, and he had left her a relic. While they were talking, a car came out of nowhere and crashed straight into the store. If Constantine hadn't come to talk to her, Liv would have died in that store because she was about to go in. This time, Liv believed him because the driver was her dead neighbor. The strange incident was beyond Liv's imagination. When she found out the story about her father, Liv quickly went home to ask her mother for clarification, but the answer was fruitless. It turned out that she was the result of a one-night stand. So when Liv was born, her mother lied to her that her father had died early. Liv looked at her father's relics without understanding what they meant. Looking up, she suddenly saw her deceased grandmother. Liv was scared and ran away from home. As a result, she met Constantine on the way. Seeing Liv panicking, he told her to take out the necklace and cast a spell. The surroundings suddenly became dark. Many spirits appeared. The train train was approaching, but Konstantin tried to hold Liv and not let her go. It was not until the train crashed through that Liv realized that what she saw was just an illusion. It turned out that Liv's father was a psychic who had helped Konstantin a lot. Konstantin knew that Liv had inherited her father's ability, so when Liv touched the necklace, she would feel another world. That was why Liv was targeted by the devil. Konstantin decided to take her to her late father's place. Halfway there, they encountered a traffic accident. The truck had unfortunately hit them. In his coma, Konstantin's biggest memory appeared before his eyes, which was the failed exorcism that sent Astra to hell. Konstantin always felt guilty about that. At this time, Liv's screams woke him up. The broken wire suddenly moved like a snake. Konstantin chanted a spell to suppress the wire. He successfully saved Liv from it, but Chaz was not so lucky. He was impaled by an electric wire and died on the spot. Strangely, Konstantin did not seem to care about his friend's death. As soon as the two arrived at Liv's father's house, Konstantin hurriedly flipped through the book to find clues. He quickly found out that the demon who was chasing her was named Lucifer. This demon could control lightning and electricity, so it could control lights and electric wires. It could control corpses through the electric current in living beings. Liv followed Konstantin's instructions. She immediately dropped blood on the map. The drops of blood suddenly stopped at one place. This was the precognitive ability she inherited from her father. Wherever the drop of blood stopped, something supernatural would happen. But first, Konstantin had to deal with Lucifer. Then he would borrow Liv's power to handle other matters. Konstantin went to visit an old friend, a talented hacker named Richie. Although the other party did not like Konstantin very much, he still found a way to convince the other party to help him decode Lucifer. When Konstantin and Liv returned, Chas also appeared, scaring her to death. It turned out that Chas was not an ordinary person. He had the ability to die and come back to life. That was why Konstantin did not care about Chas's death. Not long after, Konstantin found a tall building. He bribed the security guard to go to the rooftop. Before leaving, Konstantin also told the security guard that if he saw this light bulb suddenly turn on, he must immediately report it to me. A magic circle was drawn to confront the demon Lucifer. At this moment, the electric lights suddenly flashed. Konstantin knew something bad had happened. It turned out that the security guard was so busy with his own work that he did not notice the light bulb had turned on. At this time, Lucifer had already entered the guard and walked towards the two. Seeing the other party enter the magic circle, Konstantin immediately chanted an exorcism spell. Unexpectedly, Lucifer escaped from the human body. It transformed into Konstantin's appearance. Then Lucifer cursed him to be banished to hell soon. He began to drain all the electricity in the city. It seemed that Konstantin's magic circle was nothing to this demon, so he fired a flare as a signal. After Richie saw it, he immediately hacked into the power system. All the electricity in the city was cut off. At the same time, Konstantin ignited the magic circle to unleash the power. Lucifer lost his power at this time. He knew he couldn't defeat Konstantin, so Lucifer brought Astra. He threatened that if Konstantin activated the spell, she would be sent back to hell. Liv realized that Astra was just an illusion created by the demon, so she told him. Konstantin was furious and chanted a spell. Immediately, the flames engulfed Lucifer and took her to hell. But even though Astra wasn't real, Konstantin was still in great pain. He collapsed on the ground and could only let Richie take Liv home. Halfway there, Richie talked to her about Astra. That year, the little girl had been possessed by a demon, so Konstantin had summoned a stronger demon to save Astra. But that demon had torn Astra's body and had dragged her soul to hell. Konstantin had been extremely remorseful for that serious mistake, so he had become colder. At this moment, the sound of a police siren interrupted the two. In front was a tragic and heartbreaking scene. Liv went up to check and found that this was the location where the blood drop had stopped on the map. The next day, Konstantin received a special map from her. After escaping from trouble, Liv also wanted to contribute. She sat up all night to predict supernatural events and marked them on the map. The number of these unusual points made Konstantin worried. While Konstantin was depressed, Manny appeared again because his job was to monitor Konstantin. Konstantin did not understand why both angels and demons came to bother him. Manny only replied that he was the hell detective Konstantin. In another development, in a small town in Pennsylvania, where people mainly lived off mining, a contractor complained to his wife that workers were leaving one by one because there were strange sounds coming from underground that scared them. Immediately after that, the man went to take a bath to relieve his worries. The water in the tub suddenly turned into oil. Before he could react, the fire broke out fiercely. Not long after, Konstantin also came to this town. There was a girl sketching his portrait. Her mouth kept muttering to ask who the person in the picture was. When she just stepped out, she bumped into Konstantin. When she saw him, she stopped for a moment. This strange girl's name was Zed. She was very surprised because Constantine was the person who had appeared in her dream. Constantine looked at the sketch. He suspected that Zed was trying to approach to steal his wallet. But in Zed's heart, the man who had appeared in her dream could not be easily let go. Constantine did not hesitate to pierce the two eyes in the painting. Under the sunlight, the two holes were illuminated just like sparkling eyes. When Zed looked back, Constantine was gone, and she had indeed stolen Constantine's wallet, as he had suspected. After avoiding Zed, Constantine went to the town tavern to investigate the strange fire. After a few drinks with the miners, they told him about a rumor. There had been a mining accident that killed 9 people. Since then, there had been a constant knocking sound underground, as if there was another world, and everyone believed that the devil was the one who burned the contractor to death because he had violated the devil's land. After hearing this, Constantine immediately went to the mine. He pressed his hand against the wall and could indeed hear the knocking sound coming from underground. Suddenly, the ground shook violently. Constantine quickly ran out of the mine. He then went to the deceased contractor's house, where the funeral was taking place. He easily snuck in as a reporter. While checking the traces in the house, the contractor's wife suddenly called Constantine over. He noticed the layer of coal dust on her hands, so Constantine took the opportunity to ask a few questions. When asked about her late husband, the wife immediately said that she did not know that this job was dangerous. If she had known earlier, she would not have married him. During the conversation, the wife also took Constantine's tie meaningfully, but he immediately refused. Making her angry, contractor's workers blocked Constantine's way outside. Hearing that he was a reporter, the mine owner immediately had someone search and expel him. Constantine was not afraid, knocked down 2 of them, but was also punched in the face. This time, he did not hide it anymore and said that he was an exorcist, here to investigate spiritual matters. The owner did not want to cause confusion, so he immediately chased him away. Returning to the hotel, Constantine discovered that Zed had been there for a long time. Seeing her following him, he did not chase her away. Constantine only showed an unfriendly attitude. It wasn't for nothing that he was so cold. In fact, those who had been close to Constantine had met a tragic end, but Zed still wanted to follow Constantine because she thought it was fate. When holding his hand, Zed felt torment, despair, and loneliness. These emotions had always urged Constantine to stop. He discovered that Zed had strong sensing abilities, so Constantine decided to ask for her help. Constantine took some oil from the fire scene and rubbed it on Zed's hand. She immediately felt the burning fire and also saw a giant cross. Hearing that, Constantine immediately left Zed behind to continue investigating new clues. Going to the abandoned church in the area alone, Constantine indeed heard unusual noises there. It turned out to be a couple secretly in love. Constantine could only shake his head, speechless, but when he turned away, he saw a mysterious drawing on the wall. Constantine used his blood to guide the way. After casting a spell, he indeed saw a faint light and a dark shadow lurking somewhere. That night, Zed went to the bar and started talking to a man sitting next to her. This man used to be a priest, but after his son died in a mine collapse, he left the church and drank to drown his sorrows every day. Then the two drank together until the next morning. When Zed returned home, she found Constantine resting on a chair. After returning from the church, Constantine believed in Zed's psychic abilities. He decided to accept her into his exorcism team, but this time, Zed was the one who refused. Constantine had to introduce himself clearly. He hoped that she could also trust him and share her story, but Zed still didn't trust Constantine enough to tell him anything. In the middle of their argument, an alarm went off. It interrupted their conversation. The mine in town was about to collapse. When Constantine arrived at the scene, the miners had already been evacuated. Many workers had heard mysterious knocking sounds coming from the mine. Constantine immediately got into the mine manager's car to find out. He had to know what had happened to the mine. The manager told him that many years ago, the mine had been declared exhausted, but another mining company had taken over and expanded it again. Constantine realized that they had touched a place where humans shouldn't. If the mine wasn't closed immediately, things would get worse. At that moment, the car door automatically locked. Oil began to flow inside. A black arm emerged from the oil, wanting to drown both of them. In the critical moment, Zed ran to them. She quickly broke the car door and saved them, but the mine manager did not survive. On the way back, Constantine told Zed that the knocking sound and the black hand in the oil were caused by imprisoned souls, bound in the deep mine. Those souls were those of the dead miners. They knocked on the wall to warn people of danger. Therefore, these souls had good intentions, so they would not appear outside on their own, and they would not harm others. Constantine speculated that there must be someone behind the scenes controlling the souls, so the two returned to the tavern to hear more about the situation. At this time, Zed suddenly remembered the priest who had been drinking with her. Constantine suspected suspected that he might be the one controlling the souls to avenge his son. Zed sat on the chair the priest had sat on. She immediately saw a picture of a waterfall and a camping tent. She asked the people in the restaurant, and they said it might be a nearby camping site. The two of them immediately went there, and sure enough, they met the priest. After confirming his identity, Constantine started chanting the spell without any restraint. But after only half of the chanting, the priest continued to chant the rest. He had guessed why Constantine was here. However, the former priest was not the mastermind behind it. After he abandoned his faith, he lost his ability. The spells were no longer effective. However, the former priest revealed an important clue. The recent victims were all powerful people in the oil industry, and the only survivor was the town's mine owner. At the same time, this owner did not believe in ghosts, so he took his son down to the mine to check. As a result, they were scared to death by the spirit. Fortunately, Constantine arrived in time. He used a spell to awaken the spirit's true nature so that they would leave. Although the mine owner did not survive, his son was still alive, so there was still salvation. After saving her uncle's son, Zed somewhat understood Constantine's work. Previous conflicts between them gradually disappeared. The priest also decided to blow up the mine, as if to protect the people here from disaster. That night, Constantine went to see the wife of the dead contractor. He discovered that there was still coal dust on the contractor's body, which was identical to the coal dust that Constantine had seen on her hand. This was the trace of the spirit. This woman did not hide it anymore. She immediately summoned the spirit to deal with Constantine. It turned out that this woman had learned the black magic of the Zegan people. She had tried it before, but it didn't work. But recently, the woman's power suddenly became stronger, so she started harming others, with a plot to take over the mine for herself. But this woman forgot one thing. Her husband was also a miner, and one of the wronged souls underground. Constantine immediately summoned the husband's soul. He then pulled his wife down to the ground. At the same time, the other souls also disappeared. Everything returned to peace as before. Unlike her former companions, Zed was not afraid of trouble. After this incident, she chose to join Constantine's exorcism team. As for him, after finishing the matter, he was exhausted. Constantine didn't bother to pay attention to Zed and just lay down to sleep. After all, there were still countless troubles waiting for him ahead. On this side, there was a woman furtively searching for something. This place was filled with animal corpses as if they were offerings to suppressed demons. Immediately after, she took a strange record from the wall cabinet. Then, the woman brought it to the recording studio. She gave the record to a musician named Bernie to check the goods. Although the woman repeatedly reminded him not to listen to the record directly, Bernie was still curious and put on his headphones to listen. Immediately, a cold air enveloped the entire recording studio. Bernie's ears were frozen, but what was even more terrifying was the sound coming from the record. Unable to bear it, he stabbed his ear with a pen, causing him to die on the spot. As for Zed, she found Constantine through intuition. When she arrived, Zed saw him covered in blood and dancing wildly as if Constantine was performing a spiritual ritual. Constantine looked like a madman. As soon as she saw Zed, Chaz didn't have much time to explain, just quickly took her on a tour. The place wasn't too big, but there was a secret tunnel inside. Behind that door was a deep, dark hallway that seemed to lead straight to hell. Even Constantine had never dared to go deep inside. But Zed showed no fear. Hearing that warning, she wanted to solve mysterious cases with him even more. At that time, they received news that Bernie had died in a strange way. This musician happened to know Constantine. The location of the murder was one of the locations marked on the map. When she touched the map, a cold feeling immediately spread throughout Zed's body. So Constantine determined that Bernie's death was definitely not an accident. The two immediately went to Chicago to the local morgue. Constantine was the lead singer of a rock band, and Bernie was the one who recorded his only album. Unexpectedly, the two of them had separated into two worlds when they met again. Constantine, with a heavy face, took a dry hand and lit a fire on his fingertips. This is a ritual to temporarily revive the dead. After chanting the spell, Bernie's body began to move. In the moment of resurrection, he told Constantine that what killed him was an ice demon, an entity that resided in the Moonrise record. Through investigation, the two discovered that the Moonrise record was produced more than 70 years ago. The owner of that company was still alive, and he probably knew something important. At the hospital, Constantine showed off his special talent for the first time. The card he held could transform into any kind of pass Constantine wanted. Thanks to that, he easily impersonated a government official to to meet Mr. Mooney, the owner of the Moonrise Company. As soon as Constantine told him the purpose of his visit, Mr. Mooney immediately understood that he was asking about that record. He began to tell the story of the past. A singer had come to record at his studio, even though Mooney had heard rumors that the singer had sold his soul to the devil in exchange for fame. At first, Mr. Mooney had not believed it and had not cared about it, but when he had been recording, the temperature in the room had suddenly dropped, and he had seen with his own eyes the singer being swallowed by darkness. That was why the record recorded the sound of the devil. When Mr. Mooney held the record, he felt cold to the bone, as if a devil was residing inside. Too scared, he had hidden the disc in the wall cabinet and had not dared to touch it again. However, recently, a detective came to him who wanted to buy the haunted disc, and the payment check was signed by Fell. Fell was the famous rock star who had collaborated with Bernie. Constantine immediately speculated that with Fell's current fame, he must have made a deal with the devil to achieve success. On this side, Fell's wife took the disc back and hid it on the bookshelf. Unexpectedly, daughter accidentally saw where it was hidden. She secretly took it down when her mother was away. It seemed that the disc always incited others to play it. Not long after, Constantine broke into Fell's house, forcing him to confess what deal he had made with the devil. But Fell was completely bewildered, not understanding what Constantine was saying. At that moment, Fell's wife, Jasmine, suddenly pointed a gun at Constantine, admitting that she was the one who made the deal with the devil. Jasmine now told the whole truth. Many years ago, Fell had cancer. In order to save her husband's life, she sold her soul to the devil. Constantine was somewhat relieved when he knew this. He carefully examined the contract and discovered that the day Jasmine had to hand over her soul was approaching. The soul broker had asked Jasmine to use the record to exchange for her soul, and this had accidentally caused Bernie's death. The next transaction would take place tonight. Constantine immediately went to the transaction location in Jasmine's place. He wanted to confront the broker. After Constantine left, Jasmine and her husband discovered that their daughter was secretly playing the record. Fortunately, they discovered it in time and saved her before anything bad happened. In a dark room, Constantine found the soul broker that Jasmine had met, but he was just a hired hand. The real mastermind behind it was someone else, a black magician, someone Constantine had known before. That black magician was Midnight. Constantine felt ashamed for Midnight because he had deceived women for his own benefit. But while questioning Midnight, Constantine did not pay attention to the person who had sneaked up behind him, so he was knocked unconscious by Midnight's subordinates. When he woke up, Constantine found himself tied up in an abandoned factory. Tonight, Midnight had to get that record. This black magic item, if it fell into the hands of a black magician like him, would become an extremely dangerous weapon. Midnight would not allow Constantine to ruin his plan. Midnight immediately challenged Constantine. He placed a bottle of hemostatic medicine near him, considering it a chance for him to live. If Constantine escaped with his magic, he could use the potion to save himself. On the other side, Zed saw that Constantine was not coming back, so she called Chas to help her. At that moment, two thugs sneaked into Jasmine's house. They were Midnight's subordinates and came to get the record. Not wanting to fight, Jasmine had to hand over the record to them, but then the two subordinates were tempted by the record. They were curious and found a way to play it. Constantine was in critical condition, and luckily, a homeless man accidentally discovered him. Constantine immediately turned the card into a credit card, which he wanted to use as a fee to save his life. But after getting the card, the homeless man intended to kill Constantine. He wanted to kill people to rob them. Fortunately, Zed found Constantine's location through her senses and saved him in time. The urgent task now was to find the record. If it was played in public, the consequences would be dire. The two of them tried their best to chase after the record, but were still one step too late. The record had been played in the club, leading to a terrible tragedy. At that moment, Chas arrived with supplies. After the three of them met, they discovered that there was a deaf mute at the scene of the crime, who survived because he could not hear the music. This person witnessed the scene where two of Midnight's men demanded to play the record, and as soon as the music started, it drove the entire crowd crazy. Constantine realized that Fell was not the one who intentionally killed his friend, but the devil in the record that lured anyone who touched it. It wanted them to play the record in public. During the investigation, Constantine had an illusion. He saw the image of a white tiger. Chas had previously seen a poster for the university radio station, which also had a picture of a white tiger. The three immediately drove to the university to find clues. Constantine put on his headphones, turned up the music as loud as possible to protect himself, and went to find the radio station. Chas and Zed were in charge of cutting off the power, but the door to the power room was locked. Without hesitation, Chas decided to use a direct method. He drove straight into the door and broke it, making the radio station unable to continue working. However, the music was still playing in the room. Constantine accidentally dropped his headphones. He was in pain because of the ghostly sound. At that moment, Midnight appeared. His ears were plugged. Midnight held a gun in his hand. He shot the music player to pieces and saved everyone from the attack of sound. A thug manipulated by the music pulled out a gun and shot back. Constantine immediately cast a spell to lock him in the room. This spell summoned the very devil who had made a contract with the first singer. It appeared in the room to take back its sound. Midnight could only watch regretfully. Immediately after, the devil crushed the thug into a pile of flesh and then took the record back to hell. Midnight could do nothing more. He could only bitterly watch the item he coveted be taken away. Afterwards, Constantine captured the soul broker and brought him to Jasmine's house. He said that if Fel gave up her health, Jasmine would get back the soul she had sold. Hearing this, Fel did not hesitate. Immediately giving up her health, she accepted to become sick again to save her wife. Thanks to that, Jasmine was redeemed for her soul. Constantine followed the rules, forced the broker to swallow the contract, and the transaction was completely cancelled. Once again, Constantine saved a family, but because of this, Midnight held a deep grudge against him. Continuing the story, a mentally unstable tourist was preparing to go through U.S. Customs. An experienced officer could tell at a glance that the tourist was a drug addict, so he immediately reported it to the police. The police rolled up the tourist's sleeve to check, and sure enough, they found needle marks on his body. So ignoring the drug addict's pleas, the police opened a jar he was carrying. As a result, they were scared to death by the thing inside. As soon as the jar fell to the ground, countless insects flew out and flew everywhere, and finally they crawled into the policeman's body. Constantine was still unaware of the approaching storm. During this time, Zed practiced her psychic abilities with him. Not only did Zed discover many new abilities, but she also had many hidden abilities waiting to be discovered. Constantine seemed to have a powerful assistant. Standing in front of the warehouse, Constantine discovered that someone had broken into it. The two of them went inside and saw insects crawling all over the floor. The addict had stepped on Constantine's trap and was suspended in the air. This addict was Gary, an old friend of Constantine's. After the Astra incident, Gary had disappeared. Until today, the two of them had just met again. Zed heard this name for the first time and felt a little curious. Constantine quickly changed the subject. He asked Gary what his purpose was here. It turned out that not long before, Gary had overdosed on drugs, but when he woke up, he was already in Africa. Here, Gary met a boy who was being used as a sacrifice to seal a demon. Seeing that the boy was so pitiful, Gary used his poor magic to suck the demon into a bottle, but the bottle broke during the police inspection. On this side, the police, possessed by demons, stormed into the restaurant. He saw the food and stuffed it into his mouth, scaring the crowd. The policeman even used his bare hands to scoop up the hot French fries. Immediately after, he fell to the ground. Countless insects flew out of the policeman's body. After Constantine found out that Gary had brought the devil, he immediately used the Solomon ring. He carved a spell on a glass jar to seal the devil. Zed thought Constantine was very good to Gary. She helped him clean up without a word of complaint. But in Constantine's eyes, Gary was just a hopeless addict. He used to have a future and a comfortable life, but the temptation of drugs made Gary lose everything. After saying that, Constantine finished carving the glass jar. All that was left was to find that devil. At the same time, in the supermarket restroom, an unlucky woman was possessed by a swarm of insects. She was like the first victim. She stuffed something edible into her mouth. The security guard rushed forward to stop her and was bitten off a piece of her flesh. These two incidents were quickly reported on TV. Constantine guessed that this was a hungry ghost. He decided to go and deal with it himself. Zed and Gary would stay here. Constantine didn't want them to follow him. Although Gary really wanted to help, he still flatly refused. After Constantine went out, Zed and Gary talked about Astra. That year, Gary and a group of friends all considered Constantine their big brother. Whenever he was in a good mood, they learned some interesting tricks. When Gary heard that Constantine was going to exercise, he excitedly asked to go along. As a result, he failed to exercise Astra that time. Everyone would never forget this. From then on, Gary's addiction became more and more severe. He also gradually lost control. At this time, Zed accidentally touched Gary. She immediately felt a strong reaction and fainted. On this side, Constantine arrived at the scene. Through investigation, he discovered that after the insects left the second victim, they entered a pig butcher. When Constantine arrived at the pig butchery, all the employees there were dead. Only one possessed employee was busy eating raw meat. Constantine quickly took the glass jar. He chanted a long spell to seal this hungry demon. Unexpectedly, the glass jar also broke. Constantine hurriedly ran away. He temporarily locked the insects inside. Constantine returned to ask Gary how he had sucked the insects into the jar, but Gary didn't know either. Fortunately, thanks to Zed touching questioning Gary, she found some clues. Constantine realized that the person Zed drew was a shaman. He immediately went out to find the shaman friend he knew to ask for help, to see if he could find a way to contact the person in the painting. Although the friend did not know the other party, he had a way to help Constantine see the shaman in the painting. The condition was that Constantine had to take a hallucinogen. After he lay down, Constantine saw a scene in Sudan, Africa. That land was extremely poor. The power of the hungry ghost was stronger than ever. In order to protect the believers from danger, the shaman in the painting used the sacred kusa knife. He carved a symbol on a boy, then sealed the hungry ghost into the boy's body. Then it was sealed into a jar by Gary. It turned out that the hungry ghost wanted to go to America to develop its power, but it was unknown how it had brought Gary there, and then took advantage of his kindness to bring it to America. After knowing how to seal the hungry ghost, Constantine immediately set out to find the sacred kusa knife. As for Gary, because he was too stubborn in wanting to follow Constantine, he took advantage of Zed's ability to make her faint. When Constantine returned, Gary was gone. He just thought Gary was addicted and went out to find drugs, and that Gary didn't want to help him at all. Sure enough, when Constantine found Gary, he was beaten by a group of drug dealers. It seemed like he bought drugs and didn't pay. Constantine quickly saved Gary. Afterwards, Constantine took him to a bar to drink. After a few drinks, Gary began to repent. That year, when Astra had been dragged down to hell, he had been so scared that he had gone to find a place to hide and couldn't help Constantine. Constantine comforted Gary. Actually, whether he helped or not, it couldn't be helped. Everything was his fault. He couldn't blame others. At this time, the TV was reporting on the cases. Constantine and Gary immediately took action. The two of them rushed into a museum. The reason they came here was because there was something Constantine needed, a sacred kusa knife. The two of them split up. Gary was in charge of finding the kusa knife in the piles of exhibits, while Constantine handled the alarm and security equipment in the museum. Constantine chanted a spell to make the security guards stand in one place to exercise, and Gary also got the kusa knife. After that, the two of them went to the scene of the crime. There was a girl possessed by a hungry ghost, munching on popcorn. Constantine also explained the reason for bringing Gary along. The only way to seal this ghost was to use a human body. That person would have to endure terrible torture and sacrifice his soul to the ghost, just like the boy in Sudan. Gary also knew that Constantine would use Gary's body to seal the hungry ghost, but Gary was not angry at all. He was even ready to accept death. An addict like Gary had no hope for life anymore. If he could sacrifice himself to save everyone, it would be a relief for him. Constantine suppressed his pain. He cast a spell to seal the hungry ghost into Gary, and then carved a knife into his body. After returning to the warehouse, Zed was heartbroken when she saw Gary's tragic state. She angrily criticized Constantine for being a bastard, but he was the one who suffered the most. Constantine always warned Zed that people around him would not have a good ending, and this was proof. During Gary's last days, Constantine was always by his side. Constantine remembered his friend's painful screams to punish himself. Thinking that everything was over, another incident happened. A police officer named Jim was peeing in an alley. At that moment, a girl walked into the alley with a very disdainful expression. Immediately after, she bumped into a masked person. The other person asked her if she thought she was beautiful. Before the girl could answer, the masked person stabbed her many times. Jim saw this and immediately pulled out his gun to shoot, but the bullet that hit her disappeared immediately, and the victim was stabbed to death. At the same time, Zed felt that there was a problem with the map, and her ability suddenly disappeared. Constantine just thought that Zed had overtrained, so he took out a spinning lantern to help her strengthen her spirit. Zed looked at the spinning lantern for a while, and she began to hallucinate. Zed saw a mother teaching her child how to use a gun. This spinning lantern was indeed effective. The dried blood on the map immediately turned fresh again. Constantine realized that Zed had begun to build a connection with the map. It would be easier to solve the case later. This case happened in New Orleans. Constantine, Zed and Chaz went to that alley to investigate. Constantine took out his bracelet and chanted a spell. The gem on the bracelet immediately glowed blue, indicating that something supernatural had happened there. If it was green, it meant that the devil was nearby. If it was red, they should run away. Jim heard Constantine talking and walked in front of them. Zed immediately recognized the other party as the boy she had seen. Zed was not too surprised, as he only thought of them as scammers. Constantine could not find any more clues in the alley. He decided to find a place to stay first, and then think about it later. The hotel Constantine stayed at was quite high class, so they lost a lot of money. Luckily, he had some money from gambling. Although it wasn't much, it was enough to live on. When she took the elevator, Zed discovered that the elevator door opened onto a deserted road. She went inside and discovered a tree trunk full of marks. Immediately after after that, a car suddenly rushed towards her. Zed was shocked and finally came out of her hallucination. That night, a driver met a teenage boy asking for a ride, but the driver was not as good as we thought. After the teenager got into the car, the old driver started touching him all over. While he was doing this, the teenager disappeared. When the driver turned around, the other person was already standing in the middle of the road. The old driver reflexively turned the wheel. Immediately after that, he crashed into a tree on the side of the road and died on the spot. The next day, Konstantin and the two rushed to the scene of the accident. The police had sealed off the place. Zed intended to pretend to be the victim's family to go there to see what was going on. But after being refused, she only dared to ask for some information. They discovered that 3 similar traffic accidents had occurred near this tree. At this time, Jim was also present. Seeing Konstantin arrive before him, he immediately suspected that they were doing something bad. Jim immediately arrested Konstantin and talked later. With no other choice, Konstantin could only tell Chas and Zed to split up. Chas went to the surrounding alleys to continue investigating to see if he could find anything. He came across a masked woman asking others if they thought she was beautiful. Chas immediately rushed over. The other party took off her mask to reveal a hideous mouth. Chas was not afraid at all and even complimented her on her beauty. Unexpectedly, she swung her arms and stabbed Chas many times. Not long after, the ambulance arrived at the scene. The paramedics thought Chas had died, but soon after, he suddenly came back to life and was breathing heavily. Chas's wounds also healed. At this time, Konstantin was tied up at the police station. He tried his best to convince Jim to believe him. In fact, after Jim shot the masked person, he began to doubt this world. Jim also wanted to hear Konstantin's explanation, so his attitude became more gentle. Konstantin easily escaped from the handcuffs. He said that the traffic accident and the murderer in the alley were both caused by demons. Hearing this, Jim immediately showed Konstantin the documents. Inside was information about a model. The masked person's name was Misaki. She was originally a somewhat famous model. Her jealous colleague used scissors to cut her face. Misaki finally couldn't take it anymore and ended her life. The other colleague was sentenced to 4 years in prison and was recently released. Meanwhile, the hitchhiking boy was named Philip. 3 years ago, he died in a car accident on a small road in the woods. Konstantin suspected that someone had summoned their spirits. Jim finally believed in ghosts. He was willing to help Konstantin exorcise them. Meanwhile, Zed visited Philip's grandmother. Zed knew that she had also recently had someone summon her, and the teacher they were looking for was the same person. He called himself the Dark Magician. Midnight, New Orleans was his territory. That night, he was holding a ritual to help a widow meet her late husband. As a result, Midnight had just summoned the spirit when Konstantin interrupted. The two already had a grudge. This time, they almost punched each other. Luckily, Konstantin explained his purpose in time. Midnight's summoning magic had lost control. The spirits would disappear after talking to their families, but now they were in the mortal world and causing trouble for people. Midnight was skeptical. He used magic, knocked Konstantin unconscious, and put him in the trunk of his car. As a dark magician, Midnight could contact his sister in hell. It turned out that those dead people had actually come to the mortal world through the summoning ritual. Early the next morning, Midnight went to the client's house to collect information. He was horrified to find that her late husband was in the mortal world, and at the same time, the other party was continuously draining her life force. Midnight finally believed Konstantin. When he returned to the car, he saw that Konstantin had escaped and thrown the driver into the trunk. The two decided to join forces to exorcise the spirit. Meanwhile, Zed and Jim were patrolling the deadly road. They finally discovered the spirit of the hitchhiking boy. They gave him a ride in their car. On the way, Zed and Jim were both nervous and afraid. The boy repeated the same trick of disappearing and reappearing in the middle of the road. However, Zed was not afraid and drove straight through. As for Konstantin and Midnight, they had found enough bodies of 3 spirits. The two began to prepare the ritual to release the spirits. However, the two had different beliefs. Each chanted their own spell, causing the fire to flare up and then go out. Because of that, the body could not be cremated. Both of them thought it was the other's fault. Meanwhile, Jim and Zed encountered Philip's spirit again. This time, Zed took the initiative to invite the boy into the car. The boy seemed not to recognize her. When Zed mentioned the boy's grandmother, the boy took the initiative to suggest getting out of the car right in front of the tree where he died. On the other side, Chas found Misaki about to commit a crime. He asked Misaki back if she thought he was handsome. He didn't do it the old way anymore. Her hand was raised high, but the scissors couldn't be swung down. As for Konstantin, he finally found out what the problem was. He informed Jim to bring the relatives of the 3 souls. It turned out that because they were tormenting themselves, the souls of the deceased couldn't leave. After the 3 women let go of their obsession, Konstantin and Midnight cast another spell, and this time, the body burned fiercely. At the same time, the three spirits of Philip Misaki, deceased husband of the client, also disappeared and were put to rest. When the ritual ended, Jim returned to find Zed. It turned out that he had been in charge of investigating missing cases, and Zed's family had reported her missing. Jim understood that Zed had her own suffering, so he decided to help her cancel the missing persons file. When he was about to help Zed up, her eyes suddenly turned green. Zed only saw Jim's face covered in blood, his whole body covered in the smell of death. Constantine was at the bar with Midnight at the time. The grudge between Constantine and Midnight was cleared. To repay Constantine, Midnight stroked his sister's skull. He called the Hell Hotline to ask about the rise of darkness. After receiving the answer, his face was full of surprise. Midnight told Constantine that darkness was coming. In another development, this big, strong black dog was barking madly at a boy passing by. Under the boy's mind control, the dog's collar gradually tightened. Finally, the dog was strangled to death. The boy saw this scene and just smiled with satisfaction. Another child possessed by a demon was born. This morning, Constantine and Chaz discovered that the blood in Birmingham had turned bright red. This showed that evil spirits were at work. The two immediately drove over. They learned from the police report that a couple had been brutally murdered last night, with only their little daughter surviving. After Constantine sneaked into the crime scene, he noticed the broken pieces of a coffee cup on the floor. Constantine used smoke to recreate the process of the coffee cup breaking. He discovered that the little girl was the murderer of her parents. It turned out that she had been possessed by an evil spirit. Now that the evil spirit had escaped, it would definitely look for a new host. Each evil spirit had its own pattern of behavior. Constantine discovered through investigation that 3 murders had occurred last month. These cases were all about parents being killed and only the children surviving. Constantine suspected that these cases were caused by the same evil spirit. The police also found clues and detained these orphans. Therefore, Constantine could not approach them. He could only start with the person from the first parental murder case, Marcello. Marcello had killed his parents decades ago. After that, he was always in a mental hospital until he was old. Constantine immediately went to visit him. He found Marcello with a dull look in his eyes, like he had lost his soul. At the same time, the boy Henry, who was possessed by the evil spirit, started a malicious prank. The boy used a spell to explode a light bulb, causing sparks to fly everywhere. This action caused the father to accidentally step on the light bulb scattered on the floor. Henry's face did not change. He coldly advised Rajan to be careful. Rajan noticed that his son was becoming increasingly cold and violent. There were also many strange things happening at home. Halloween was approaching, and the boy's favorite thing was carving pumpkins. Unexpectedly, Henry stabbed the pumpkins used for decoration. Seeing this, Mother Lazy grabbed her son's kitchen knife. Henry was dissatisfied and controlled the crow to crash into the door and die. After dark, Constantine used a magic incense burner to explore along this road. The smoke suddenly stirred and flew towards a house. Constantine stared at the family across the street. It turned out that this smoke would fly in the opposite direction when it encountered evil forces. The two men did not act hastily. They waited for the incident to happen. The next day at school, Henry killed his classmate because his classmate was fighting over the spinning top. The boy used a spell to pull the other boy into the fast spinning top. Constantine could no longer stand by and watch the boy do evil, so he disguised himself as a teacher, using the excuse of visiting the house to approach Henry. Then he quickly took out the mandrake root and showed it to the boy. Constantine proved to the couple that their child was possessed by an evil spirit. However, to exorcise the evil spirit, its identity when it was alive had to be clarified. Before that, under Constantine's guidance, Lazy used anesthetic to make Henry unconscious. Then the three of them went to the house of the first victim. Looking at the log with the axe, Constantine suddenly thought of Marcello's tragic childhood. He lit 3 candles. Then the 3 of them held hands, sat in a circle and performed the spirit-calling ritual. Along with Henry's convulsions, the atmosphere was extremely tense. The door of the abandoned house slowly opened. It turned out to be a small deer. The failed summoning of the spirit made Constantine a little discouraged. Chaz thought that Marcello was probably not possessed by an evil spirit. He attacked his parents because of long-term domestic abuse. In the evening, when Lazy brought Constantine home, Henry had already woken up and was preparing to attend the Halloween party. Rajan was angry when he saw Constantine. The argument between the 3 made Henry upset. The boy controlling the chair knocked Rajan unconscious. Constantine suddenly realized that parents' argument was the key to activating the evil spirit. Henry then hurriedly hid in the haunted house to gain geographical advantage. Constantine dealt with demons every day, so he was not afraid of these props. He patiently explored the haunted house, looking for Henry's figure. Unexpectedly, Henry used a ghost costume as bait. He distracted infected and broke Constantine's mirror. It turned out that the evil spirit was Marcello's soul. This kind of vengeful spirit of a living person is very rare in the exorcism world. Fortunately, Constantine dodged the sharp axe that Henry swung at him. Then he loudly called Marcello's name and ordered the boy to quickly return to his position. A black smoke and a shrill screech disappeared. The boy Henry finally regained consciousness. In another scene, one morning when Zed was painting, she suddenly activated her prophetic ability. She discovered several snakes wrapped around her legs. Zed quickly told Constantine about the hallucination. This reminded Constantine of the recent news. A priest who was bitten to death by a poisonous snake came back to life on the spot. The two immediately set out to verify. After the priest became famous, after his own death and resurrection, more and more people came to visit. Some came to heal the sick, but many wanted to witness miracles. They only saw the priest clasp his hands together like he was drunk and mumbled an incomprehensible language. Constantine's expression changed when he heard this. This was the language of angels. Zed didn't expect Constantine to know an angel. How could a priest be able to use the power of an angel? Zed approached the priest under the pretext of seeking faith, and immediately the humming of an angel rang in her ears. The priest was on the verge of death and yet received the care of an angel. Zed was so shocked that he couldn't calm down. Constantine had no choice but to personally intervene. He asked the priest directly why he knew the language of angels. The priest asked Constantine back what qualifications he had to doubt God's grace. At the same time, the first person whose leg was healed by the priest had a mutation. His eyes were bloodshot and his skin was cracked. He brutally killed the doctor who helped him re-examine. Constantine guessed that the miracle performed by the priest was probably a disguised dark force. This power would often harm the earth. Sure enough, the two of them discovered thousands of dead fish in the nearby river. This was strong evidence of the use of dark power. Constantine immediately summoned the angel Mani. Zed was full of anticipation, wanting to admire the angel's demeanor. Constantine teased him again, saying that Mani was not the holy angel Zed imagined. Mani possessed Zed, who was watching from the side, and teased Constantine, saying that Constantine finally respected him. Constantine spoke of the priest's strange power, especially the language of angels. Mani heard this. His expression became serious. He pointed to Constantine to face the sun. The truth would come out. Constantine couldn't stand his hidden meaning. However, Mani only gave a suggestion. Constantine said that Mani had already crossed the line. He couldn't provide any more help. Zed turned to the sun and hummed the angelic song she heard in her hallucination. Zed hummed a few lines softly. Unexpectedly, from afar came a reply. The singing was extremely pure and intoxicating. Two followed the singing to the base of a tree. They discovered that among the fallen leaves there was an extremely beautiful angel lying there. Her wings were one high and one low, very uneven. It seemed that she was seriously injured. After Constantine and Zed discovered the injured angel, the two immediately took her to rest in the warehouse. The angel's name was Imogen. When she led a soul into heaven, the soul plucked out a feather, so she fell to earth. Not only did the soul revive on the next spot, it also gained divine power and became a priest to save people from danger. The dark angel Mani also descended to earth. He sympathized with Imogen, but could not interfere in human affairs. Zed could not see Mani in her spirit state. She could only feel around. Mani felt very confused. No mortal had ever been able to pluck out an angel's feather. Constantine went to the priest alone to get the feather back. He also explained the difficult situation of the angel Imogen. The priest, who gained divine power, became very complacent. He scolded Constantine for daring to order God's messenger. Constantine saw that he refused to hand over the feather and prepared to snatch it, but he was unexpectedly knocked away by the divine power of the feather. After knocking Constantine away, the priest became even more complacent and unafraid. The sermon had turned into his personal concert. Zed used a beauty trick to beg the priest to perform a baptism to regain his faith, but during the baptism Zed secretly took the feather. The priest realized and stepped forward to snatch it, but he was also knocked away by the divine power of the feather. At this moment, all the believers who had been healed by the priest had turned into cannibals. Constantine picked up his wooden staff and fought. The two put aside their grudges and brought the priest into the church. Although he was so arrogant that he forgot himself, human nature was not bad. The two men stayed behind to fight the cannibals, while Zed took the feather to save the angel. Only then did the priest realize that the appearance of the ghouls was due to his abuse of the angel's power. Zed brought the feathers. Under Imogen's expectant gaze, she stuck the feathers back into the wings. At the same time, all the ghouls regained their sanity. Constantine, who had escaped danger, regretted it. He said that this time it was more dangerous. Sure enough, Imogen, who had restored her divine power, had removed her disguise. The originally holy wings gradually turned black. It turned out that the the ghouls were controlled by Imogen. Thanks to Constantine, she had retrieved the feathers and restored her divine power. Imogen was satisfied and wanted to fly out of the warehouse. She wanted to show off her talent in the human world, but she ran into a barrier. Constantine also did not expect that the protective charm against evil spirits that he had set up would become shackles that imprisoned the ghouls. It turned out that the fallen angel Imogen had disguised herself as a holy angel. She said that the priest should have gone to hell. Then Imogen stuffed her feathers into him, which allowed her to enter the human world. Imogen suddenly attacked Zed to threaten Constantine to unseal the seal. The next second, Manny used the spirit possession technique to give Imogen a surprise attack. Manny used the heart-taking technique to kill the angel Imogen. At that moment, Constantine truly recognized this angelic ally. Zed held the heart in her hand with a face full of surprise. Constantine put the heart away. His collection had another trophy. Then the priest truly awoke. He sincerely preached to make up for his sins. One evening, Zed suddenly received a phone call from her pursuer. The two had met in art class, but Zed had just gone through a big battle and was not in the mood to date. Unexpectedly, she escaped a disaster thanks to this. Speaking of last night, the newborn baby in the church suddenly disappeared. The mother was also brutally murdered. The priestess, with some virtue, immediately used projection magic. She found Constantine thousands of miles away and asked him to help. Constantine was curious about what kind of evil spirit was causing this. He asked Annie, but she didn't know anything. But the cross on her chest was burning, which was a warning that an evil spirit was at work. Annie, who was all the way in Mexico, insisted on Constantine taking action because Constantine had owed her too much. The two had had a relationship before. This time, Constantine didn't bring Zed with him. He and Chaz went all the way to Mexico and went to the church where Annie lived. Since there were police at the scene, the three of them could only wait until night to take action. Constantine was preparing to conduct a divination at the crime scene to find out the truth about the murderer. At this moment, a nun rushed in, so the three of them quickly stopped and they randomly found an excuse to cover up. The gallant Constantine even teased the little girl, and Annie, who stood by, could only remain silent. After Constantine finished chanting the incantation, the divination stones caught fire again. Constantine's expression was heavy. The demons had hidden their whereabouts, but the good news was that the baby was still alive. Constantine and Annie arrived and found that the placenta had disappeared, and a large tree nearby had borne human flesh, also known as the forbidden fruit. After Constantine cut a forbidden fruit, bright red blood flowed out, and all the fruits on the tree also bled. The husband Hugo noticed the movement in the backyard, and after seeing this scene, he was stunned. Although he did not get the placenta, the appearance of the forbidden fruit had revealed the identity of the demon. That was one of Eva's many sisters. That year only Eva agreed to marry Adam. The rest of her sisters all married the devil. At this time, the three of them received news that another baby had been lost in the church. On the other hand, Zed stayed in the prison because she was bored. She went to town to buy drawing paper, and coincidentally, she met a male model who pursued her. Zed had a good impression of this male model, but he had bad intentions. When Zed touched his hand, she saw the illusion of the safe, which brought back Zed's tragic childhood memories. Zed tricked him into going to the prison and suddenly made a move. Only then did he reveal his purpose, which was that her father missed her. After Constantine returned to the church, he planned to borrow the power of the devil and then reflect the murderer's face in the spring water. Annie was a little unhappy. She thought that this would pollute the church. But Constantine, who could be said to not give up any means in exorcism, this small sacrifice was nothing to him. Constantine then surrounded the spring and drew a magic circle. Just as he was chanting, the little nun rushed in and interrupted the spell. After the goddess of hell retreated, Annie and the others heard the noise and ran over. Only then did they learn from Constantine that the goddess of hell, Lamashtu, was Eva's youngest sister. She loved to eat newborn babies the most, but this time she left the living behind. What was so special about Hugo's family? In order to solve this mystery, Hugo took the two to his grandmother's house. After hearing this, his grandmother was extremely shocked. She said that La Brujeria had returned and they were collecting newborn blood. Constantine couldn't believe it. La Brujeria had long been wiped out by heaven. His grandmother said that they were just hiding. It turned out that Hugo's ancestors were once members of La Brujeria. Constantine couldn't help but suspect that the rise of darkness was La Brujeria's doing, so whether it was saving the child or clarifying the truth, he had to lure Lamashtu out. Constantine came up with a good plan. He used Hugo's blood to fill the dead chickens and disguise them as babies, then lured Lamashtu out. The plan went very smoothly, but Hugo was so eager to save his child that he acted hastily. Lamashtu hugged the dead chickens and hid in the underground pipes. Constantine was afraid that Hugo would mess things up again, so he ordered him to stay above ground. Hugo had no choice but to put the gun in Annie's hand. On the other hand, after the male model woke up, he tried his best to persuade Zed, saying that her father was also doing it for her own good. Zed was speechless with disappointment. Her childhood was almost locked up in the house, so when she came into contact with the male model, she saw the illusion of the safe. This was a warning. Zed's father had had a great background. He was the leader of the Crusader Legion. He had had countless followers under him. Zed was equivalent to the Saintus of the Legion. At that moment, 2 followers rushed in. Zed used the male model as a hostage. Unexpectedly, the followers killed their comrade without hesitation. There were many organs in the prison. Zed took advantage of the void space to eliminate 1 person, but because of a momentary carelessness, she was injected with anesthetic by the man. Returning to the church, after Constantine and Annie entered the underground tunnel, they discovered 2 missing babies, but the 2 were blocked by Lamashtu. Constantine even used the life of the baby to threaten Lamashtu. He forced her to reveal La Brugeria's plan. Constantine took out the statue of the demon Pazuzu, who was Lamashtu's husband. He also teased her that her husband had called her home for dinner. After saying that, Constantine put the statue in the water. The blue flame immediately enveloped Lamashtu, sending her back to hell. Constantine was then betrayed by Annie. She attacked him and left him behind, then ran away with the child. He dragged his severely injured body to fight the legendary monster of the evil fetus. In the midst of danger, he took out the demon Pazuzu's divine chest and removed his mental protection. The demon statue glowed. After Constantine engraved it on his arm, his pupils turned blood red. The evil fetus approached, sniffed, let out an unwilling growl, and retreated. When Chas found Constantine's fatal wound had completely healed. He had no intention of pursuing Annie's betrayal. He considered himself to have deserved it. After all, he would do anything to exorcise the demon. His friends had sacrificed a lot for him. Demon possession was like the flu. There was an incubation period. Constantine fortunately thought that before the demon completely possessed his body, he should have time to expel it. Unexpectedly, his own words turned against him. The demon Pazuzu began to fight for control of his body. After being controlled by the demon, Constantine knocked Chas away and escaped. When he woke up again, he only saw the corpses and severed limbs of the thugs all around. The scene of death was horrible. At this time, Zed had just escaped from the assassins sent by her father. After learning that Constantine was possessed by a demon, she flew to Mexico that night. The 2 discussed the most urgent matter of finding Constantine, and Annie's projection magic could locate Constantine, so the 2 returned to the church. At this time, Annie was praying for Constantine. Zed used his prophetic ability to find out that after betraying Constantine, Annie felt very regretful, but her mouth was very stubborn. Annie did not want to help. Zed had to use his killer move that Constantine could talk directly to angels. Could believers like her do it? Annie was finally convinced. At the same time, Constantine was sent to a maximum security Mexican prison. There were all kinds of fierce people in the place. Constantine did not sit still and wait. He went to the bearded man who knew everything in the prison. Constantine learned that there was an abandoned church in the prison. He needed some props for self-exorcism such as candles, holy water, and a full-length mirror. At this moment, 3 burly tattooed men rushed in. They were all members of the death squad. The bearded man had betrayed Constantine long ago. The devil sensed the threat that was about to appear. Constantine tried to restrain himself. He didn't expect that the drug dealers would not listen to his advice and seek their own death. After Constantine was demonized and destroyed the death squad in prison, he completely secured his position as the prison's overlord. The traitorous bearded man quickly knelt down and begged for his life. At this moment, the nun Annie used projection magic to enter the prison. The bearded man even thought he had seen a ghost. Annie was very disappointed in Constantine. Constantine had run out of options and was planning to atone for his sins with death. Annie sneered and said that he wanted to trick her again. Under her guidance, Zed and Chas arrived in front of the prison. As the saying goes, doing things secretly will soon be discovered. Therefore, Constantine had prepared a precaution for himself, which was the tape recording of the exorcism spell. If that doesn't work, then the only option is to use exorcism. Zed infiltrated the prostitutes and easily entered the prison. Chas's method was simpler. He gave the guard a painful punch. Although he was beaten badly, he successfully entered the prison. Annie, thanks to her status as a nun, was able to enter the prison openly. The 3 of them began to help Constantine exorcise the demon. After dark, however, the exorcism spell on the recorder had no effect. At this moment, a miserable scream was heard from outside. The snake demon transformed into a lawyer and entered the prison. The soldier who accompanied him became his first target. Constantine hurriedly urged Annie to use the exorcism weapon to pierce his heart. He would rather die than let the demon king descend to earth. The snake demon hurriedly stepped forward to stop him. He originally came to kill people, but ended up saving people. Annie performed a beautiful turn. She used a magical weapon to kill the snake demon. The conditions in the prison were limited, so a few people discussed going back to the prison to exorcise the demon. The bearded man collected all the drugs in the prison and injected them into Constantine's body. Even demons couldn't handle such a large dose. They planned to use a body bag to get Constantine out of prison, but the problem was that the guard's nose was still crooked, so Chas's disguise definitely wouldn't be able to pass his test. Annie finally had to use projection magic. They successfully escaped from the prison and returned to the prison. Constantine took advantage of his moment of clarity to quickly instruct Annie. He said that only believers with steadfast faith could exorcise the Demon King. Among them, only Annie could do it. Then Annie began to use holy water to exorcise Constantine. The burn caused Constantine unbearable pain, and Constantine's body actually floated up. The devil was about to completely possess his body. Annie had given up. Zed shouted again. The one who was blocking the exorcism was not the devil but her. Zed had seen through his intuition that Annie's inner self had always been locked up and bound. She had never forgiven herself. After being awakened, Annie finally mustered up her courage. She recited the Bible clearly. Her steadfast faith greatly increased the effectiveness of the holy water. Constantine's mouth spat out streams of black gas. The devil's mark on his wrist gradually disappeared. The three people saw this and breathed a sigh of relief. The dark angel Manny also descended. His face was full of satisfaction. This time it was the story of Constantine's most loyal ally. A few years earlier, Constantine and Chas had gotten drunk in a bar. Constantine had picked up a girl. When he had been about to go out and have fun, he had been worried that Chas would be stubborn about driving while drunk, so he had cast a protective spell for Chas. Because he had been drunk, he had kept forgetting the words. He had said it as if he had been joking, and Chas hadn't paid attention. After Constantine had left, the band on stage had started playing with fire, unexpectedly causing a fire. 48 people in the bar had been burned alive, including Chas. However, he miraculously had survived. Both lucky and suspicious, Chas immediately had gone to Constantine. Constantine had been extremely surprised to learn that he had come back to life. Even he himself hadn't expected the spell to work. It had turned out that the protective spell he had cast for Chas had been a spell created by the magician Merlin for King Arthur. So in the following years, in order to make these lives meaningful, Chas had helped Constantine travel around to exorcise evil spirits to the point of neglecting his wife and children. Taking advantage of the recent absence of evil spirits, Chas immediately returned to New York to visit his child. Unexpectedly, as soon as he had left, an unusual appearance appeared on the fortune-telling map. The blood spots in New York turned bright red. A man in a black cloak performed magic. He released black bone streaks that spread into civilian homes. When Chas returned home, he found his daughter Cassidon lying stiffly on the ground. Her mouth and nose were constantly bleeding. That same night, the hospital received dozens of such patients. Constantine and Zed immediately arrived. The two discovered that Cassidon's body was still alive, but his soul had disappeared. Chas's wife's expression was very ugly after seeing Constantine. It turned out that she also knew Constantine's dark history. He had once failed to exorcise a little girl, but now only Constantine could save their daughter. Then the three of them went to a gun shop, the owner of which was the priest friend that Constantine mentioned. The priest immediately chased him away with a gun after seeing him. After all, Constantine had a bad reputation among his friends. Chas was a man of few words but acted decisively. He directly grabbed the gun and controlled him. This matter was related to Chas's daughter's life. The priest used Cassidon's doll to cast a spell. This time, he succeeded in causing Cassidon's soul to enter his body. Constantine hurriedly asked for the girl's whereabouts. At this moment, the candle flame suddenly flared up. The priest's body floated up again, and the three of them suddenly changed their expressions. They only heard an old voice coming from his mouth. Constantine asked the witch to show her true form, but the witch warned him not to interfere in other people's business. After saying that, the witch immediately chanted a spell to burn the priest's body. Chas and Zed initially thought that the clue was broken again, but unexpectedly, Constantine had a new clue. The spell that the witch chanted was only known to a few people. He wrote down the spell and asked Zed to sense the location of the nearest person. Zed touched the spell and saw an abandoned train station filled with medicine-making tools. He did not expect that the witch behind it had such powerful magic. The witch was able to hurt Zed while he was in a state of premonition. After the three of them entered the station, the person behind the scene finally revealed himself. Paul was an old man in the witch world who had only been a student and assistant to others all his life. After the darkness rose, even an old man like him became powerful. He also researched the soul-stealing magic. Chas didn't say much and prepared to take action, but unexpectedly, Paul just waved his hand and caused his bones to crack painfully. reality. Paul really had a mission, a dream monster that always stole his soul. As long as Constantine sent this beast back to hell, he would release Cassidon's soul. Constantine accepted without hesitation. After the two of them signed a blood contract, Paul provided a magic weapon. They could see through the shape of the dream monster through it. Then the two of them used the magic weapon to find the dream monster's hiding place. However, its entire body was transparent, appearing mysterious. The two of them were very passive. Only people who were sleeping could attract dream monsters. Constantine cast a sleep spell on Zed and ambushed nearby. Not long after, an invisible monster slowly approached Zed. Constantine had no choice but to dispel the sleep spell first and then grab the electric baton. With just a few blows, he killed the dream monster. When the two returned to the hospital, they found that there were even more patients with their souls extracted. Without the dream monster to disturb them, Paul became even more unruly. The two called Chas to prepare to complete the transaction. Chas's wife wanted to go with them, but Constantine was worried that she would do something too extreme, so he had no choice but to let Zed stay behind to keep her company. The two men then went to Paul to give him a mission. He reminded Paul to fulfill his promise of returning the soul, not expecting that Paul had cunningly clung to every word of their blood-bound pact. He said Constantine to chase away the dream monster, not beat it to death with a club. Paul wanted the two to continue working for him. Constantine compromised again. At the same time at the hospital, Zed saw Ginny was sad, so she tried to use her prophetic ability to summon Cassidon's soul. Zed held her hand tightly. Cassidon's voice came out of her mouth. However, before the mother and daughter could talk for long, Zed had a severe headache and fainted on the ground. Ginny found a piece of paper in her pocket. On it was Paul's location. At dusk, Chas finally revived. Paul was shocked to see this. With 31 lives, he could do whatever he wanted. At the same time, Constantine also woke up. When he arrived, Paul was negotiating a deal with Chas. When Chas detonated the grenade, his wife Ginny also ran over. This scene stunned her. Constantine quickly covered her under his body. A violent explosion blew the two people in the center to pieces. Then he told Ginny the secret of Chas's immortality. He said Chas had 47 lives. Ginny went home half believing and half doubting to wait. The next morning, Chas returned home as if nothing had happened. Ginny emotionally rushed into his arms. She finally understood her husband's mission. After Paul's collapse, all the souls he had imprisoned returned to their original bodies. Constantine had been guarding Zed in the hospital all night. This was an adverse reaction to the exposure of the soul. Zed, half conscious, told Constantine. During the prophecy, she also saw Constantine's mother. 4 college students went to the cemetery late at night to seek thrills. They were about to pay the price for disrespecting the gods. The 4 stole a diary from their professor. It was written about a man named Sharko Sol. They created their own mental space. They laughed and talked, reciting the incantation in the diary, determined to seek thrills to the end. Unexpectedly, the next second, the 4 were randomly teleported to a gloomy house in the dungeon. The place was filled with bloody torture instruments and books that were all blank. This middle-aged man with a gloomy face was Saul. He was also the owner of the house. Lily encountered a teenager while exploring the hallway. He was scared and begged Lily to take him away. They absolutely could not let that person catch him. The 4 of them trembled and returned to the cemetery. What had just happened was like a dream, but it was extremely real. They did not dare to discuss it anymore. There was no way 4 people could have the same dream. The next morning, Carter saw Saul's figure in the mirror, but clearly there was no one behind him. Immediately after, Carter's soul was pulled into the spiritual space. Saul used a plastic bag to cover his nose and mouth until he died. At the same time, in the real world, Carter died of suffocation in front of everyone. Speaking of Constantine, he had been very lonely recently. His partner went with his wife and children, and his little fan had called in sick. He was alone at home in the stone house, drinking to drown his sorrows. The dark angel Manny descended. He reminded Constantine that his best friend was about to meet with trouble. Constantine immediately thought of Professor Richie of the Ivy League University. Richie was furious at Constantine's visit. He immediately ordered the guests to be expelled. Constantine said that he was in danger. Richie received a call from Assistant Professor Adam, who learned that a student had died in the school. While the two were talking, Lily saw Saul in the mirror and immediately screamed. Adam quickly comforted her that it was definitely an illusion. Constantine believed that the student's death was probably caused by an evil spirit. However, Adam still did not answer the phone. The two found Lily in the crowd that was mourning Carter. After some questioning, he discovered that 4 people had gone to the cemetery last night to seek thrills. But Lily had hidden the story about the other world. She knew that no one would believe her anyway. Constantine, with his sharp intuition, went to the cemetery alone to investigate. He discovered traces of a spell left in the tomb. Under Constantine's magic, some mysterious characters appeared appeared, he immediately told Richie about his discovery. Richie recognized that the soul astral characters were a religious ritual of ancient Egypt. This was one of the projects he had stopped. He quickly checked the bookshelf and found that Saul's diary had disappeared. Constantine had also heard of this person. When Saul was alive, he had claimed that he could travel to another world. Everyone thought he was crazy. Now it seemed that it was true. Saul's diary states that if he dies in the spirit world, his body in the real world will also die in the same way. The two men plan to return to the tomb to do more research to close the door to the spirit world. At the same time, Miranda practices alone in the dance room. She is completely focused, not noticing the audience in the mirror. Miranda stares at Saul's eyes. Her soul is pulled into the spirit world. The surviving teenager calls for help again. His two hands have been brutally cut off. After Carter's accident, Adam blames himself a lot. After all, he had stolen the diary. Now he can't contact Miranda. He wants to go back to that house to find Miranda. Lily thought Miranda was probably in the ballroom, so the two of them split up to look for her. As a result, both of them found Miranda. One found the body, the other met the spirit. Adam in the spirit world found Miranda hiding in the closet. There was a steel rod stuck in her stomach. Adam just tried to apologize. His noise attracted the murderer Saul. In the outside world, to protect Lily, Constantine and Richie took her to the safe room. Constantine cast a protective spell on all the mirrors in this room. It could be said that no one could touch them. Speaking of the spirit world, the souls of the three murdered college students all became Saul's toys. He was a cold-blooded and elegant killer. He even politely told them the rules of the game. However, Adam naively thought that no matter how badly injured he was, he wouldn't die in the real world. Unexpectedly, their bodies lost their lives from the first death. In the real world, Constantine immediately set up a magic circle and prepared to enter Saul's spiritual world. But Richie was timid. He had studied Saul's diary. He knew that Saul was God in the spiritual world. The angel Manny appeared silently. After Constantine saw him, he immediately gained confidence. The two men chanted a spell together and entered the spiritual world. They searched everywhere for Lily. After the two entered a room, they found the original survivor. However, the boy retreated with a sinister smile. Then, the boy revealed his true form. Constantine had no power to resist. His hands were nailed to the wall. Fortunately, he could still use his mouth. Constantine believed that Richie's spiritual power far surpassed Saul's. Saul looked at the two people, struggling in despair. He really thought that building a door would be able to master his field. A large sun appeared across the sky, instantly dispelling all the darkness. The wilderness was full of flowers. Richie was furious at Saul's incompetence. After Saul gradually disappeared, the entire building shook and collapsed. The two men rushed out, and the four students followed closely behind. However, only Lily was able to walk out of the house. The bodies of the other three had long since died. After this disaster, Richie was reborn. He no longer used a tape recorder to lecture, but taught seriously. As for Constantine, he continued to use alcohol to numb the pain. It was easy for him to save others, but difficult to save himself. This morning, the angel Manny suddenly descended, reminding Constantine to go to Cartesian Hospital, where a special patient appeared. Constantine was a little against the angel directly assigning the task. He intended to use divination to verify first. Unexpectedly, Manny activated his divine power to burn the map. Constantine's exorcism team had no choice but to go to Cartesian Hospital. In order to stay in the intensive care unit properly, Chaz deliberately stabbed himself in the thigh. The three of them found that special female patient. Her veins were black. However, she was surrounded by doctors. At Constantine's command, Chaz pulled out his baton, causing blood to splatter everywhere. The doctors who heard the sound all rushed over, which gave the two of them an opportunity. The woman's heartbeat began to weaken. Just as the doctors were doing their best to save her, Zed suddenly had a seizure. Through the examination of the equipment, a tumor had grown in her brain. After hearing this bad news, Constantine was absent-minded for a long time. The corners of his eyes were wet. During this time of living together, he had truly accepted Zed. Constantine could not bear to tell the truth to Chas. The urgent matter now was to clarify the cause of the black veins. That woman eventually died. Constantine was preparing to use magic to examine the body. While Chas was changing clothes, he met an old, charismatic black man. He had just finished a skin graft and had even gotten into a fight with someone. This action caused a piece of skin on his face to tear off. Constantine admired people who were not afraid of death. He told him to be his friend. He would guarantee him a glorious death. The two of them arrived at the morgue and just happened to see a medical staff member secretly drinking alcohol. After chasing the medical staff away, Constantine cast a holy light spell. He found the woman's body completely engulfed in darkness. At this time, Zed had already heard from Dr. Galen about the tumor. This made Zed doubt that her prophetic ability was an illusion caused by the tumor. tumor. Constantine comforted her that there were things that could not be explained by science, but magic could not remove her tumor. Constantine was upset and went to the rooftop to relieve her anger when she was called back by a doctor. He thought smoking was not allowed here, but the doctor asked him for a cigarette. It turned out that the doctor was possessed by Manny. He immediately got angry and ordered Manny to cure Zed. He suspected that Manny had known about Zed's condition for a long time. Constantine took out a red gas bottle from his pocket and crushed it. Manny inhaled it and became unconscious again. Constantine then carved a rune on his chest and temporarily trapped him in the doctor's body. Constantine told him that before the spell expired, he would use his mortal body to assist them. At the same time, the medical staff hiding in the warehouse drinking wine was suddenly attacked by a monster. The monster's huge hand covered in black veins invaded the medical staff's blood vessels. The two were struggling on the rooftop when they discovered that the electricity in the hospital was unstable. This was a signal caused by an evil spirit. The two immediately searched. In the eyes of mortals, Manny still had the appearance of a doctor. Constantine used his access card to open the warehouse door. A disemboweled corpse came into their sight. Constantine used his bare hands to open the medical staff's chest. He discovered that the heart was emitting a purple light. He thought of the legendary Black Diamond, a dark substance transformed by evil wizards. God himself crushed it. He scattered it all over the world, and Constantine's stone house kept a fragment. Constantine asked Manny to stay and continue investigating as a doctor. He returned to the stone house to find that piece of Black Diamond to test the authenticity of the legend. Constantine wanted Chas to feel the power of the Black Diamond himself. Chas was used to being a guinea pig. The Black Diamond felt cold to the touch. Nothing unusual. Just as the two of them felt disappointed, the veins on Chas's arm began to turn black, just like the two dead people. On the angel side, after Manny entered the doctor, he immediately looked up the information of the two victims. He found out that one was a drug addict, the other was an alcoholic. Both of them relapsed after being rehabilitated. At this time, the flirtatious nurse said that there was more detailed information in the storage room. She gently stroked the back of Manny's hand. This made Manny feel itchy in his heart. Constantine brought another piece of Black Diamond back to the hospital. He told Manny about his discovery. People who came into contact with Black Diamonds often had hot tempers, and their strength was doubled. Constantine suddenly smelled perfume at this point. Manny's face was full of confusion. Although he had helped a girl, the feeling of pleasure made him feel ashamed. Constantine seduced him. After all, he was using the doctor's body. Strictly speaking, he did not consider it adultery. At this moment, Dr. Galen was advising Zed. He hoped she would accept the surgery to remove the tumor. But Zed was worried that if the tumor was gone, she would lose her ability to see, so she delayed, not wanting to make a decision. Dr. Galen told Zed that there was a piece of shrapnel in her body. Because it was too close to her heart, he could not remove it. If he, like Zed, had the chance to remove the ticking time bomb inside body, he would accept it without a moment's hesitation. Manny revealed himself as an angel. Zed had always wanted to see the true face of an angel with her own eyes. Constantine had arranged it this way to make up for Zed. At the same time, Constantine searched everywhere for Midnight's shadow. When he arrived at the rooftop, he found a strange person with distorted features. His head was full of pustules and was attacking Midnight. The strange man killed Midnight and left without killing Constantine. The two men's previous deduction was clearly wrong. Manny urged Constantine to continue to exert Zed's ability. How could Constantine bear to let Zed prophesy again? Manny solemnly said that this was a war, and injuries were inevitable. Zed considered for a while, and did not intend to remove the tumor in her skull. Galen angrily rebuked a disobedient patient. He had tried his best to save them. At this time, the two Constantines arrived. Faced with Constantine's accusation, Galen appeared innocent. He had saved people all his life. How could he harm others? Constantine took out another piece of Black Diamond. The Black Diamond in Galen's body was immediately activated. He rushed out frantically. The two men chased after him, following the direction of the fragment. Zed saw the angel's illusion again and hurriedly told Constantine. Constantine finally came to his senses. He cut his palm and cast magic on Manny's chest. Manny finally regained his angelic power. His head emitted a holy light, and he spread his wings, gently calling Galen's name. Under Manny's guidance, Galen restored his true appearance and ascended to heaven. The Black Diamond fragments in his body gathered together again. After this battle, Manny completely recognized Zed, and he even appeared before her in his true appearance. He was curious why Zed refused the surgery. She said that magic had to pay the price. These three beautiful brides were all the wives of this perverted uncle, but he was still not satisfied. He even wanted to marry a fourth wife. Tonight, under the blood moon, the girl left home. Vesta went to the park alone to play. The wandering beggar said nervously, obviously that she would have a bloody disaster tonight. At this moment, the three girls appeared and chased the beggar away. They kindly comforted Vesta and suggested playing a game of pretending to be a family. Not far away, the pervert was very satisfied with the bride's performance. At this moment, the patrol guard discovered him. The pervert lied that the car had broken down. Then, taking advantage of the guard's lack of vigilance, he strangled the guard unconscious. After that, he used a red-hot iron to torture the guard all night, so he postponed the wedding. At the same time, Detective Jim sought out the exorcist Constantine, his colleague, to investigate a missing person case that had been mummified by the murderer. It turned out that tonight was the last of the 4 blood moons. The previous 3 blood moons had girls missing. Jim believed that evil spirits were causing trouble, and this was Constantine's domain. The 3 dug up the policeman's dry corpse, and under the influence of holy water, the mark of the devil appeared. Constantine guessed that the 3 missing girls were kidnapped by Satanists. When Vesta woke up, she found herself in an abandoned house. The house smelled bad, and there were strange drawings in blood on the walls, which scared her very much. 3 girls appeared again to comfort her for a while. Constantine's team went to the missing girl's house. Zed touched the girl's belongings, but did not receive any enlightenment, which made her very discouraged. Constantine realized that she had something on her mind. While Jim was asking questions outside, Zed told Constantine that she had seen Jim's future. He died a horrible death, his whole body emitting a green light. At this moment, Jim walked in, and the two quickly ended their conversation. When Zed went out to get some air, the angel Manny possessed Vesta's mother to comfort her. Constantine knew that time was running out, so he advised Zed to put aside his worries and use all his strength to predict. Zed closed her eyes and concentrated, and in the next second, she appeared in the house of the missing guard. The guard had left a clue before he died, and the murderer was playing with an iron. Zed immediately wrote down the words. Then, through the reflection of the mirror, she got the exact address. On the other side, 3 girls were busy helping Vesta with her makeup, and 4 little brides with different skin colors were all married to this perverted uncle. What kind of magic power did he have? The man led the bride, who was as small as a porcelain doll, into the bridal chamber. Vesta turned her head to look at her 3 sisters, but found that there was no one in the room. She did not expect that they had died neatly on the bed. Constantine deduced that the pervert was a follower of Satan, and that he had kidnapped 4 girls in a row during the 4 blood moon nights. This was clearly a sacrifice to Satan. Zed, through her intuition, found the guard who had been murdered by the pervert. When she thought that the clues were gone, Detective Jim unexpectedly said that there was only one way in and out nearby. The surveillance camera must have recorded the license plate of the murderer. At this time, crows were cawing non-stop outside the window. Constantine had a serious expression and told the two to continue chasing the murderer. The people who specialized in catching criminals for rewards had noticed and wanted to arrest Constantine. Not long after, Midnight chased after him with a gun. He raised his hand and fired a shot. Constantine barely managed to sarcastically mock Midnight. He used his remaining dignity to exchange for a disgusting reward. Actually, Midnight was not a greedy person, but this reward had extraordinary meaning. Constantine's sacrifice could free his sister's soul in hell. Constantine heard this and understood in his heart that only La Brujeria could do this kind of generous act. The one behind the bounty was La Brujeria. Midnight did not say another word. He raised his gun and shot Constantine's head off. Unexpectedly, another Constantine jumped out in the next second. With just a few punches, he knocked Midnight down. At the same time, Zed and Jim on this side had already investigated the pervert's identity. 6 years ago, the pervert had killed his wife on their wedding day just because she was not a virgin, so he had only kidnapped virgins, and the pervert had led his little wife to worship the Satan statue. The enchanted Vesta finally came to her senses. Under the threat of the man, she pretended to kneel before the statue. Then the pervert took out a rope and tried to strangle his little wife. His 3 previous little wives all died because of this wedding ring. After knocking over the oil lamp, Vesta hurriedly fled. The town was very remote and deserted, with not a single soul in sight. Vesta called until her voice was hoarse, but no one could be heard. She had no choice but to hide in the ruins. Constantine arrived first, just in time to avoid the 2 people playing hide-and-seek outside. He searched the room and followed the stench to find the bodies of the 3 girls. Zed grabbed a shovel and attacked the pervert. Jim saw that and quickly stopped her. Constantine was a little unhappy, hinting to Jim that such a sick criminal should be eliminated to avoid the consequences. After this battle, Zed mustered up her courage and confessed to Jim about his impending death. Her intuition was never wrong. Jim was very calm after hearing it. It turned out that because Zed never dared to look straight at Jim, he had implicitly understood something and knew that it was difficult for him to escape danger. Jim declared declared that he would cherish every moment of his life. After speaking, he forced a kiss on Zed. This scene happened to be seen by Constantine. After leaving the bar, Constantine went to the overpass to go to the bathroom. Angel Manny came to see the evil of humans was not inferior to that of demons. This made Constantine very tired. Manny put his hand on Constantine's shoulder, encouraging him. Midnight, who was about to go to jail, suddenly discovered that time had stopped. He got out of the police car and looked around. Angel Manny showed his true form. He told Midnight to tell La Brujeria to cancel the warrant for Constantine, and La Brujeria served Manny. The enemy Constantine had been searching for so long turned out to be right in front of him all along. Thanks for watching, goodbye, and see you next time.